right.
Okay, everybody, good evening and welcome to another JUMPinar with Jumpstart Germantown. My name is Alina DeLisser, and joining us tonight will be Elizabeth Baldwin of License and Inspections, and she's going to be talking to us about licensing and permitting for developers. But before we get into her presentation, just a few housekeeping matters for us. And for those of you that have attended these JUMPinars before, this will be old news to you, but for those of you that this might be the first time you're tuning in, we'd like to just go over a few things with you in terms of how things work. So Derek, can you kind of walk us through how the platform works and how we take questions?
Yeah, sure. So the chat is going to be disabled for this session, and we'll open it up at the end for networking purposes. But the way you're going to be able to ask questions to Elizabeth is going to be going into the Q&A box that's at the bottom. It should be on the bottom tab. And you'll type your question in there, and then we'll review it. And when there comes a natural moment, we'll be able to ask it. And then also we'll save some kind of just relevant questions to the whole presentation towards the end when we have like a kind of more open forum Q&A. And yeah, I don't think there's any polls tonight. So other than that, that's about it.
Yes, yeah, we don't have any polls tonight, but that's a good reminder. And also, folks, as you recall, Jumpstart Germantown is open for business, and we are still doing loans. So the director of Jumpstart Germantown, Angie Williamson, will give us an update on how things are going with the program.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for another JUMPinar. As Alina said, we are still accepting applications. We have definitely been getting some more as things are opening back up and have closed on a few loans as well. Some exciting news is our Jumpstart Philly loan program is now open to individuals who have not yet gone through the Jumpstart training program. So until now, it was reserved only for Jumpstart training graduates, but we've now opened that up, similar to our Jumpstart Germantown, which is also open to graduates and non-graduates alike. And also next week, we have a little change in our lineup, and I will actually be speaking on our Jumpstart loan process and going through kind of a step-by-step to show you how to apply for those loans next week on our JUMPinar. Thanks.
Great. Okay, everybody, so our speaker tonight is Elizabeth Baldwin. As Chief Code Engineer for the Department of Licenses and Inspections, also known as L&I, Elizabeth leads the development and implementation of Philadelphia's codes for the safe and lawful construction and use of buildings. She is responsible for the interpretation of codes and the associated programs and procedures required for effective administration and enforcement. Elizabeth has served in the public sector for over 20 years, with 14 of those years dedicated to L&I. She began her career with L&I as a plans examination engineer, and prior to her current appointment in March of 2019, she managed all licensing, permitting, and plan review as a permit services director for L&I. Elizabeth earned her bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Drexel University, and she is registered in Pennsylvania as a professional engineer and certified building code official. Elizabeth was recently appointed to the Pennsylvania UCC Review and Advisory Council, which analyzes and recommends changes in the statewide building codes. Welcome to the JUMPinar, Elizabeth. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I also have with me today Jay Scuria, my colleague. He is one of our plan review supervisors and deals with the day-to-day operations, and he is going to be assisting me with the presentation. Okay, so with that, you can share the PowerPoint.
Yep. So I think Derek, you're still sharing. I think you need to get out. Okay, there we go.
Okay. Okay, so right now we have a view of Hanson.
Sorry.
Okay, great. So thank you very much. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about permitting and licensing and thinking about what level of detail is needed. It's tough because there's a lot that goes into it. So we're really just going to give you a high-level view of permitting and licensing and give you information on how you can really help yourself, where you can find the information that you need to be successful. So we're going to cover permit and licensing basics. Take a look at our website to see where you can find all of the pertinent information. We are going to go through Eclipse a little bit. I know that last week's presentation was focused on Eclipse, but there are a few things that it's important for us to highlight to you. And then also we're going to touch on job site safety. So we'll start with permitting and licensing basics. So what do you need for construction? There's really three components to it: your zoning and use permit, your construction permits, and your licenses. So what requires a zoning permit? A change in use requires a zoning permit. You actually need to review the zoning code to determine what your current use is and what you're changing it to, or if you are changing it. Any change in building height or floor area, that could be internal or external. So if you were, say, adding a mezzanine, that would require a zoning permit. If you're adding a rear addition, a one-story rear addition, that requires a zoning permit as well. Signage and changes in parking conditions also require zoning permits. What is important to know is that zoning runs with the land. So a zoning use permit is not required for a change in ownership or a change in tenant. Once you have your zoning permit, it stays with the land. And zoning is a really important part of the process. And it's very important that you're familiar with your zoning history before you even get started with your project. And this could be residential development. You might be renovating a three-family dwelling, and you need to know what the legal use of that property is before you even get started. Or you might be constructing an addition, and you need to know if the zoning code will allow for the new dimensions. So all the information that you need to get started is on our website, phila.gov, and there's a few different pieces that you should be looking at. The first is the zoning permit history. The second is the zoning map to determine the zoning designation for your particular property. And the third is the zoning code, so you can evaluate what the allowances may be, and you know what kind of process lies ahead of you so you can plan properly.
So Elizabeth, you're blowing through this really quickly. Can we go back to that last slide?
Sure.
And can you give us a little bit more context? How big is L&I? How many, what is the structure of L&I? Are the people called inspectors? Are they agents? Can you just kind of give us the hierarchy and
Sure.
how big L&I is in terms of how it's distributed across the city?
Sure. So L&I has about 400 employees, and we're split into a couple of different sections. About half of L&I is focused on construction, permitting, and licensing. And the other half is focused on compliance. So construction, permitting, and licensing, we're looking at your new construction project. You submit your application to L&I. We actually review it against volumes of codes to determine if it's compliant. And if you have a permit, you can proceed. And then you call for inspection from one of our district offices. Right now we have 7. So they're inspectors. So when you're submitting your permit application to L&I, you submit it to a plans reviewer. They process your permit. Once you have your permit, you contact your building inspector. And he is the person, or she is the person, who will come out to the site multiple times to ensure that you are adhering to the approved plans or the approved permit. So the other half is what we call like code enforcement or code compliance, and that's ensuring that buildings are maintained properly so that you adhere to the property maintenance code, fire code requirements, the structural integrity of each building is maintained. So they're really making sure that the buildings are safe. They are also inspectors.
So here in Germantown, there are lots of properties that are vacant, that appear to be abandoned. At what point does the L&I crew, the code enforcement person, do they canvass a neighborhood like on a weekly basis, a monthly basis? I mean, it seems like there are lots of buildings that should be torn down, but they're not being torn down. They look like they're about to fall down, but they're not. They haven't been torn down yet. So what's the process for that?
Okay, well, so just to clarify, I'm actually here to talk about permitting and licensing.
Okay.
tell you a little bit about that process, but that would be a very different topic.
Okay,
So if we generally are driven by complaints, although we will canvass the neighborhood and we have some other tools to determine if a building is unsafe.
okay,
Is unsafe, then, and we need to seal it, we put it on our list to actually seal the building. I don't know how long that typically takes, but if a building is structurally unsound, then we actually measure the severity. We give the property owner the opportunity to correct the violation, but if the property owner fails to do so, and it becomes an imminently dangerous condition, meaning it's a direct threat to public safety, then we will actually contract with demolition contractors ourselves to tear the building down.
okay, great, thank you.
Okay. So again, we are focusing on permitting and licensing though. We'd be happy to come back for another session if you're interested in learning more about code enforcement.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Okay. So again, if you are a developer and you are looking at a project, the first thing that you want to do is evaluate the zoning history. So if you go to the next slide, Jace, we can show folks how to do that. Okay, so this is atlas.phila.gov. You can get here through phila.gov/LNI, or you can just go right to Atlas. This is a great tool. It's a database that compiles information across departments. We are only looking at a few pieces right now. So the first is property assessment, which is the Office of Property Assessment. Whenever you're making an application with LNI, you need to make sure that you use the address filed with the Office of Property Assessment. We also use the owner information that's on file with OPA. So if there was a recent change and you're a new owner, then you would need to submit that information along with your permit application, proof of sale, either a settlement or a deed, a settlement sheet or a deed. If you go to licenses and inspections, that tab, there's a lot of great information there. There's the permit history dating back to about 2006 for construction permits. There's a license history dating back to about 2004. And the zoning history is our complete zoning history that we have on file, which goes back to the 30s. And then there's a zoning map that will tell you what district you're in. So this is just a shot of the Office of Property Assessment. So you can just get some information at a glance. You can verify that the address is correct because it doesn't always match the mailing address. You can also find out more information. There's a link there, see more property search. You can get more expansive information through that link. Okay, next slide. Okay, now here is the zoning map. Did we skip through the history or is that next, Chase? Okay, great. Okay, so here's the zoning map. If you go back one. So every property in the city of Philadelphia has a zoning designation or a zoning district, and that determines what's permissible on that lot. It determines permissible uses as well as the bulk of your building. And it's designed to ensure that your project aligns with the character of the neighborhood. So there's what we call the base zoning district, and most of the requirements are defined there as far as what is permitted, whether it be a use or height and area. And then there's also some overlays that they usually impose greater restriction, but occasionally it's an allowance based on the geographic area. So for instance, in this case, we went to 28 South 2nd Street and you can see it's in multiple overlays. So not only would I have to be familiar with the allowances of that base zoning district, but I'd also have to be familiar with the overlays. Okay, next slide, Jace. Can you go back to the history, Jace? I think we skipped that somehow. Okay, so here's the history. And again, we're just showing permits and zoning permit documents. The permits are recent permits and it just gives you information. The zoning permit documents, though, provide you with the complete history. We scan these files between 2008 and 2010. So the bulk of the history will be found in one older file. But essentially everything that we have on file for zoning is available through the website. Now, under this tab as well, it's not shown here, but under this tab, you'll also find violations and license history.
So Elizabeth, I have a question. Under the
Yes.
history, like if you go back to that previous slide, So imagine you looked at the permit history. You see that the status is still open, and it's for something that the permit was originally given 2 years ago with the prior owner. And as far as you know, the job was done. How does that process work when it's still listed as open, but it's something that might have been under a prior owner, should have been completed?
Okay.
And you have physical, you can physically tell that it was completed, or it looks like it was completed, but it's still saying open here.
Okay, in that case, I would just contact the district office if you believe this permit should have been closed. Because if you see that it is open, then it has not in fact been closed. And it could just be a matter of the inspector failed to complete that last administrative step, or it could be a matter of the previous owner never actually called for inspections. So you need to be wary of the fact if it's left open, and you do want to contact the district to find out what the status is.
Okay.
Okay. And likewise, violations, be wary of open violations. Sometimes it will say closed, but that could mean that it was referred to court. You're looking for a complied violation. Okay, so now on to the code. I know what my zoning district is, and I know the history. I know that my use is legal, and let's say I want to build an addition. So then I can actually go to the code itself. Again, this is phil.gov/LI. I could have gotten to the code through some of the links on Atlas, or I can go right through resources, applicable codes, and you'll see the list of all the codes that LNI is responsible to oversee. And you can click on any one of them. They actually all take you to the Philadelphia Code, which is the compilation of all of these codes. So once you get there, if you're looking at zoning, you want to open Title 14. Next slide, Jace. And you can look at various tables throughout. So for instance, Chapter 6 identifies the specific uses, the use categories, and it will tell you what is permitted. If there's a Y, it's permitted. If there's an S, it's a special exception, meaning that you can actually obtain the use, but you do have to go to the zoning board and demonstrate that there is no adverse impact on the surrounding community. If it is no, then you need to request a variance from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And both of these processes require coordination. Both the special exception and the variance process require coordination with the Zoning Board of Adjustment and the RCO in the neighborhood. In Chapter 7, it gets into dimensional requirements. This is where you can find out how high your building could be, how much open area you need, what sort of setbacks exist. And then if you had any overlays, there's specific links to the applicable sections. If we actually, can you scroll back to that map real quick, Jace? Yeah, you can see right there, you would actually just click on the section and that will take you right to the applicable zoning code section. Okay. Okay, so then next, what requires a construction permit? Pretty much everything requires a construction permit. All alterations, including electrical and plumbing, unless there's a very specific exemption in the code, say for flooring or painting. A change in occupancy classification or an increase in lawful occupancy also requires a permit. What does not require a permit? Not that much. So if there's a change in ownership, tenant, or operator in Philadelphia, you do not need a new permit, a new CO. Or if there's a change in use with no change in classification, you do not need a construction permit. We use in two different ways. There is the use under the zoning code, which again is the impact on the surrounding community. And then there's the use and occupancy classification under the building code, which it deals with life safety, egress, that type of thing, allowable occupancy of a building. So you can actually have a change under the zoning code, but not the building code. So for instance, if I had an office, let's say I was an architect and I have an office, and now it's changing to a tutoring center. There are no renovations required. I still need a new zoning permit because it's changing from office to personal services. However, I don't need a new CO because under the building code, they're both business uses. So they're two distinct things. and you need to make sure that you keep them separate. Okay, next slide, Jace. Okay, so and then licensing. So you need zoning, you need construction permits. Then licensing, you need a commercial activity license, formerly the business privilege license. This is one license issued per entity, and it links to your tax account. There's also trade-specific licenses. There's specialized licenses for electrical, fire suppression, or plumbing. And those include requirements of the individual. We vet the education and experience. And if you do not need a specialized license, most work can be done under a general contractor's license. A homeowner may only perform work. Can you go back, Chase? Thank you. A homeowner may only perform work on an existing 1 or 2 family dwelling if they live on the premises. So if you purchase properties and renovate them for sale, then you cannot perform work on the building unless you have a contractor's license. Only somebody that lives there can do that. Likewise, a home improvement contractor who is registered with the state can also perform work on existing 1 and 2 family dwellings. They do not require a separate Philadelphia license. However, they must register clips. This is something that is fairly new, and I think that it's taken a little while for home improvement contractors to acclimate. So if you do operate under a home improvement contractor license, then I would urge you to register to avoid any delays. And likewise, to avoid delays, all contractors must maintain an active license, current insurance on file, and an active tax account. So if you actually are a contractor, you want to make sure that everything is in order before you file. And if you are the owner, you want to make sure that your contractor has everything in order before they file, because otherwise it's going to create delays. It creates greater delays in Eclipse than it did under our previous permitting system. So just make sure that everything is current. It's fairly easy to keep your license current, and it will be well worth it because you will avoid unnecessary delays. Okay, and also rental licensing. I'm not sure the scope of development that's happening here, but if you're dealing with multifamily buildings, you're purchasing a multifamily building, everything looks legal. You still want to be very careful. Make sure that you check Atlas to verify that there is current licensing. If there is not current licensing, you want to make sure that the zoning is valid. So you do want to review that zoning history. And you want to make sure that it hasn't been abandoned for any period of time. When you get a property sales cert, all it does is identify the last legal use on the zoning file. It doesn't, and this is under state law, that's by state law what we're required to provide. It doesn't actually speak to the fact, are there licenses that legalizing this building? Does this building have a certificate of occupancy? Has this building been vacant for any period of years, which may cause it to lose its zoning? So you do want to confirm licensing. That's great if the building has the proper license, but if not, then check into the zoning. And you also always want to make sure that the property has a certificate of occupancy. If the use and occupancy changed after 1999, meaning let's say it went from a single family to a 4-family after 1999, there is a definitive record on file with the department. And if you do not have that CO in place, then at some point, whether it's when you renovate or there was no prior license and you're pulling a license, you're going to be asked to demonstrate compliance, and you may need to go through the whole review process again if one does not already exist. Okay, so that was just a very high level look at permitting and licensing. And now I want to flip over to our website. Should I pause for a moment here?
Yeah, sure. We do have a few questions coming in. So with the records that go back to the 1930s, is everything digitized? Or are we still talking about having to come down and pull paper?
No, so actually all of our zoning records were scanned, again, about 10 years ago. Sometimes there are records missing. So just because you can't find a record doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't exist. Or there may have never been a zoning record on file. So for instance, single family dwellings don't have a zoning record in most cases. Duplexes, a lot of times they were constructed under one address. So you would actually have to find that master address to find the record. Or something like a church, they typically did not pull zoning permits either. So they're all the records that we have on file, but there may be missing pieces.
Okay. We have a question here from Robin. She wants to know how much is the commercial activity license, and if flipping houses using different LLCs, does each LLC have to have a cow?
Yeah, so the commercial activity license is actually free, but each LLC must have a separate CAL. So every legal entity, every tax account has a companion CAL.
Okay. Okay, we have a question that came in at the very beginning, as soon as you started talking. What IRC code does the City of Philadelphia follow at this time?
Currently, we're on the 2015 IRC code, and I will actually show you where on the website you can find a listing of all of our codes. We took a quick look at it. We're on the 2015 IRC and the 2018 IBC.
Okay, and then what fire code does the City of Philadelphia currently follow?
So it's our own fire code, but it's adopted from the 2018 International Fire Code. So you
Okay,
can actually see on our codes page, all the codes are listed, and there's some links to some of the ICC codes.
okay. And then a question from Kent. Kent wants to know, and you did already say this, but if you can just say it again, does the completed status mean that the activity has been inspected and is closed?
The completed status, I would have to check on that. The completed status should mean that. If it was anything else, it should say closed, I believe, but I would have to verify that so I can follow up with you later.
Okay. Okay, let's jump back into your presentation. We're getting more questions, but we can weave them in later on.
Okay, so we just want to take a look at the website. This is actually how we tried to share all of our information with our customers, and this has been especially important during the building shutdown. So we actually revamped our website maybe 6 months ago, and this is our new-ish website, phila.gov/LI. So on this main page, I just want to point out a couple of things that are really critical right now if you're doing business with L&I. Can you go to the next slide, Jace? Okay, so on our main page, phila.gov/LI, if you scroll down the page about 1/3, 2/3, there are announcements and posts. And this is where you're going to find all of the most current critical information. Again, this is very important during this time because even though all construction activity has been permitted to resume, there's still some critical information here about what you need to do to prepare for construction. You need a pandemic safety officer. You need to have a safety plan in place. During construction, you need to maintain social distancing, and there's certain requirements in place. There's a maximum number of people permitted on a job site. There is personal protection gear that's required. So this is where you're going to find all of that information. And then you're also going to find information when we reopen the building. So as I'm sure everybody knows, city buildings were shut down along with everything else in mid-March. So we have moved into the yellow phase, but the municipal services building has not yet been reopened to the public. We at L&I, we haven't made any announcement yet, and we probably won't make an announcement until we're pretty close to this, but we do expect to begin accepting customers in 2 to 3 weeks. By the end of the month, we do expect to receive customers in the concourse. However, it's going to be by appointment only, and the appointment system that we're going to end up using will switch a little bit. So you want to keep an eye to find out when we're going to reopen, and also how you can actually visit the MSB, because it's going to be very different than it was, before we closed.
So Elizabeth, off the record, you're among friends here. What has it been like working from home, and is it possible, completely off the record, is it possible that the city might decide, hey, this has kind of worked out pretty well for us, maybe we should have more of the staff continue to work from home indefinitely once we're back in the green phase?
So I think that it has been okay working from home. I personally have not been working from home that much. I've been going into the municipal services building for most of this. But for our staff, for our plan reviewers, it's been a more seamless transition for some of those folks. But other services, we really do need to provide in person. So we are still under the safer at home order. So even though we're in the yellow phase, if you can work at home, you should be working at home. So again, it's going to be different when we reopen. Our entire staff is not going to be back in the building. We wouldn't be able to do so while maintaining social distancing requirements. And then like everybody else, there are concerns about how you even get people into work. So we will not have everybody in the building. Some people work quite effectively from home, but we do want folks to rotate back through, and we do want to provide services in person as well.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so also on the same page, because we are still shut down, there's a lot of information on how you can navigate your paper applications. So when we shut down, we had a good month's worth of work to do, and examiners took those applications home to continue reviewing them. In a lot of cases, the permits were approved, just never picked up. So we're holding all of this paper with no real way for you to access it. We were fortunate that we did go live with Eclipse when the building shut down. It happened the same week. So we never intended to make paper applications available through Eclipse. It's a little bit bumpy, but we have been able to do so. And on this page, resources to help you navigate, it will provide direction on how you access your paper application. And then there's a whole series of help links. They're primarily just temporary help links, so we can assist you to the best of our ability while all of our staff is working from home, and some folks can't work from home. So a lot of these will go away when we reopen, but for the time being, I think it's important. I also want to point out there's a register for an L&I Eclipse, E-Plans and Zoning Training session. If anybody is going to do business electronically, then I would encourage you to sign up for these sessions. I know there was a walkthrough last week. I'm going to touch on a few things this week, but you really should attend those sessions to get a full understanding of how to interact in Eclipse. Okay.
So Elizabeth, I have a question from somebody. Kina is asking about Eclipse. She says that on Eclipse, her permit has a due date. Mm-hmm. Should she expect to have an answer for her permit?
She sure should, and I can actually show you where you can find out the status of your permit as we walk through the website.
Okay.
As well. Okay. Okay. So we're back to phila.gov/LI, just the main page, and I just want to point out a few things. Contact us is very important. There was just that whole list of interim connections with L&I, but this is permanent. This is typically how you would contact us. On this page, you'll find all the district offices, how you submit a permit question or how you submit a code question. And this is typically what you would use under normal circumstances. Okay, next slide, Jace.
So through that contact page, what's a normal time period to expect a response?
Anytime you
72 hours or?
So we don't do hours, but it's 2 business days.
Okay.
If you contact us on Monday, then you should hear back by Wednesday. But if you contact us on Friday, you're not going to hear back on Sunday.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so also on our website, we have what we call services, and this is really great. If you need to know what is required to submit a permit application, and you should, or a license application, they're organized by type. So for instance, under licenses, you'll see business licenses and trade licenses, and then every license type has its own page. And the same with permits. Every permit type has its own page explaining what the requirements are. Okay, so next slide, Jace. So this is typical. This is a get a complete demolition permit. I just chose this one randomly, but every page has the same information. There's an overview, just an explanation of what this permit is, who can apply. In most cases for permits, you have to be either the owner, the contractor, the expediter, the design professional, or the attorney. Or I don't know if I said expediter, but or an expediter. What is required? And this goes into detail. Do you need plans? Do the plans have to be sealed? What are the requirements for the plans? What are the standards for electronic submissions? What forms are required? Are there other requirements, prerequisite approvals from other departments? How do I get to that other department's page to figure out what they need to see? Do I need a contractor? All of that information is contained within the service. There's also information on how you apply. Can I apply online? Can I apply in person? What the time frame is for that particular review type, what the cost is, and also links to relevant code sections and other forms. So this is get a complete demolition permit, but if you're applying for a building permit, it would be get a building permit, get a zoning permit, get a sign permit. So there's a lot of different services on here, and it will tell you everything that you need to know about filing that application. Next slide, Jace. I also want to point out contractor requirements. So anybody that is a contractor, there's information that's specific to you. There's a code of conduct, which is a combination of requirements that you must comply with, and also some best practices, how to be a good neighbor. OSHA requirements, and that's primarily the OSHA requirements that we enforce for OSHA 30 and OSHA 10. Worksite signage, and then also some tools that are specific to the contractor, like how you can find all of the permits that are associated with your license. Okay, and then there's a resource page, which is actually my favorite page. And again, we had those links along the top. Resources is one of those links. There's tools. This is where you'll find codes, the code bulletins, which you also need to pay attention to. The FAQs. We do have a newsletter. We haven't sent it out recently since the building closed, but typically we send it out about every 2 to 3 months. And again, it's pretty dry, but it's important information that we're communicating to you that we think you need to know. There's a lot of changes that happen in L&I that affect you. There's a lot of legislative changes. There's a lot of processing changes. I think of all the departments in the city, probably the most change occurs within L&I. And you want to keep on top of that through some change logs as well. So there's a whole lot of stuff on this resource page. But if we flip to tools, the next slide, you'll see a bunch of things that will help you. You'll see Eclipse. That's just the link to Eclipse. Help using Eclipse. Here you'll find FAQs, videos, how-to guides, and it's designed to help you through the Eclipse experience. The permit application tracker. This is what you can use to find out when your permit is due. You mentioned that there's a due date in Eclipse, and that is true. But you can also look it up through the permit application tracker. And in that tracker, if the result is not what you expect or your application is past due, there's actually a link to get a permit status, and it goes to a supervisor to figure out what happened to your permit. Why didn't you get the results? Are we late? Did you not get the email? Is somehow the due date miscalculated? So that kind of thing. And then there's a whole bunch of other things here. A direct link to property sales certification. Legislative information takes you to the city council's page where you can look up recent ordinances. So there's a lot of great tools here. Okay, next slide, Jace. And then when in doubt, just search. I actually use the search option all the time. I think it's really great. And I know where things are, but if I don't feel like actually going through 4 clicks, then I'll just use the search and you'll find what you need there. Okay, so that does it for just an overview of the website and where you can find the information. Are there any questions or shall I move on?
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a water break too.
Sure. Okay, great. So we have a question here from Anonymous, my favorite. Every week we have somebody called Anonymous who types a lot of messages, types a lot of questions. I'm not sure if it's the same person or if it's different people, but this person says they have a building permit that says it's ready for issue, but does not allow them to download it. There isn't a button for payment, and now it's about to expire.
So there's about 4 different questions in there.
Oh,
so
okay.
Say regarding the expirations, all permits have been extended by 6 months. And if you recall on our main page, I said there was an announcement section and construction FAQs. You can find more information there. The script is actually going to be run in Eclipse within the next couple of weeks to update all of the dates in our system as well. So you don't have to worry about your permit expiring. Now,
Okay.
if for issue, It means that you can see it. This is probably a paper application that you can now see through the system, but it was probably unintended or it wasn't advanced properly. Or you're the contractor and you weren't the applicant. So there's, again, you were never intended to access paper applications through Eclipse, so it gets a little bit glitchy. So there's one of about 3 reasons why you can't see it. But what you should do is use that JOP form, even though the permit itself is visible. When I said under announcements, there's a bunch of links. One of those is to access a legacy permit, and you state whatever the reason is why you need to access it. And somebody will make sure that you have the appropriate link. So I know it's not a straightforward answer, but it could be multiple reasons, but they're all things that we can address.
But legacy permit is like the magic password, magic phrase.
Yeah.
And you can't, okay.
Legacy permit is any permit filed on paper. Now, if it was a permit that was not filed on paper, it was filed in Eclipse, and you can see that it's ready for issue. More than likely, there's an issue with the contractor license. Either the insurance is expired, the license was expired, or they're not tax compliant. What should have happened was the examiner should have identified the reason in a hold. But again, if you can't say it, then just notify us and we'll fix it, we'll advance it.
Okay. And then I think you did answer this question earlier, but Tamika is asking if a building had a zoning for a storefront and so it's like a mixed use, a storefront plus multifamily on top, right? Does that zoning remain in place even if the property had been vacant for 20 years or more? I think you said that these expire after a certain time, right? If they're not being used.
Yeah. So there's something in the code. I would be wary, and I would probably look deeply into this. In the zoning code, there's something called an abandoned use. If the use was intentionally abandoned for more than 3 years, then it's lost.
Okay.
That's really difficult to determine. At L&I, we would really just use the physical space. If the physical space wasn't adapted, then you didn't abandon it. But if you completely gutted that building and there's no evidence of a storefront other than the fact that there's a zoning permit on file, then there's a good chance it's lost. But most times we require a statement that it was not intentionally abandoned. However, if that's not the case and it has been vacant for many years and the building was completely renovated or gutted, and somebody appeals any subsequent permits or licenses, then you are vulnerable. So I would say if it's been vacant for more than 20 years, you should definitely look more deeply into that to ensure that the physical space is still storefront. Otherwise, it may be lost.
Okay. And a question here from Stephanie. She wants to know, does L&I get involved in the new lead program?
We get involved in the new lead program because it's a requirement for the license. So essentially with your rental license, I think we're referring to the rental license. With the rental license, we will actually ping a database that the health department is maintaining to make sure that you've submitted the required certifications to them, similar to the tax check that we do with revenue. So we're not directly involved, we're not managing it. However, we will not process your license unless there's positive proof that you have submitted the required lead safe or lead free cert to the health department.
Okay. And Kevin would like you to just elaborate on when architect plans are needed to apply for a permit or license.
Okay, so
you're changing the layout of a place, right?
Well, so the first thing that you need to do is figure out when plans are required. If it's a commercial building permit and you're renovating it, then you're going to need plans. If it's just a single family dwelling and there's no structural alterations, you won't need plans, although you're going to need a certification from an engineer or an architect that that no structural alterations are required in order to get that. But as far as so it's, do you need plans or don't you need plans? And if you look on the individual services on our website, it will spell all that out. Then the next issue is, do the plans have to be prepared by a design professional? So essentially, if the plans have to be sealed, if the cost of work is $25,000 or more, or it includes structural alterations. So there is a chance that you don't need plans for your renovation if there are no structural alterations. And you might not need an architect seal if it's less than $25,000.
Okay, great. And one last question from Nancy. Nancy wants to know if she buys a property that says, she says, if you buy a property that says you as the buyer are responsible for the CO, is that easy to fix, or is that get a little complicated?
So I think that you as a buyer are always, okay, so that means there was no certificate of occupancy on file. It could be complicated, and I would definitely question that. I don't know if that's boilerplate language. However, if you don't have a CO, let's say that you purchased a 3-family dwelling and there was no CO on file. If it was changed after 1999, there definitely should be a CO on file. And if you need to get a CO, it's not easy. You need plans. You definitely need plans for that. And you have to adhere to the current code. So it's not as if you would be required to comply with the code in effect at the time the renovations were made. We don't know when that happened. We would apply the code as written today. So I do think that is something that you should be wary of.
Okay. Okay, great.
Okay, so I just want to hit on some things regarding Eclipse. And again, I'll try to be brief here because I know that it was discussed last week. But from the L&I perspective, there's some benefits. Online permitting, obviously. Certain permits will auto issue, and it does support electronic plan submission. You have access to your account at all times. We never intended, again, for you to access your legacy permits or your permits filed on paper. But now that's also possible because it was the only way that you could really do business with us. It does require some steps, so it gets a little bit complicated. It's not indicative of the intended design. It's really just like a fortunate side effect that we can take advantage of. So there are more streamlined approval processes across the departments. The vision of the city in general is an enterprise system where you submit your application to the city and you don't need to worry about what department it's going to. We're not there yet, and it'll probably be a long time before we get there, but this is a big step in the right direction. There's a whole lot of other departments that participated in Eclipse to the extent that they were able. Streets, PWD, planning, historic, art, the fire department. You can actually submit your plans through Eclipse or get approvals through Eclipse in certain cases. I think that a lot of the subsequent application types have been eliminated, and it creates a more streamlined process. So for instance, if you were filing an appeal on a permit previously, it was disconnected from your actual permit. And once you got the variance, you had to bring it back to L&I physically. And if you failed to do it, then you could have actually lost your variance. If we never actually processed the permit, then it's not valid. So, I mean, a lot of folks just miss that last step, the last piece of the paperwork, and it ended up impacting them greatly. So now it's within the permit job. It comes right back to the examiner. You don't have to worry about bringing your decision from the zoning board back to us. Same thing with amendments. If you need to amend a previously issued permit, you can just do it through the permit job if the permit job is still active. Inspection scheduling. Prior to Eclipse, you had to connect with the inspector directly. Now you can schedule your inspections over the phone using our automated voice response system or online. Then we also have what we call combination applications. This isn't really a change. It's just encouraging people to submit their trades with their building permit. In doing so, you really will, it'll require more work up front, but you will avoid unnecessary delays during construction, because most of the complaints that I received had to do with trade permits that were seriously lagging the building permit and preventing the issuance of a CO. So here you can apply for everything together, and you just can't pick up your plumbing permit until your master plumber is named. And I just want to note that these are optional services. Right now, it's the only way you can do business with L&I. but once the building reopens, we will resume in-person services by appointment. Okay, next slide, Jace. Okay, just some business changes. If folks were doing business with us prior to Eclipse, residential new construction must include mechanical, electrical, and plumbing information. This does not require plans. The only difference is that you need to provide some basic information to us upfront, such as the number of plumbing fixtures or the estimated cost of the electrical work or the mechanical appliances. So we'll process these all. These permits do not require plans, and the approvals just sit there waiting for the contractor to be named to issue. Design professionals and responsible charge and attorneys must register their license and their CAL of serving as the applicant. A home improvement contractor must register their PA registration. It's not really a license, but they have to register that in Eclipse to serve as the contractor. I think of these three things, the design professionals have done the best job in registering, followed by the attorneys, followed by the home improvement contractors. There's actually a decent amount of delay due to home improvement contractors who have not yet registered. And also, if the contractor is not the applicant, the contractor must affirm association. So that means they have to go into Eclipse and just approve the application to proceed under their license. And again, make sure the contractor keeps license, insurance, and taxes current at all times to avoid delay. Okay, next slide, Jace. Okay, so very quickly, if you don't have an account, next slide. It's very easy to get one. Anyone can sign up for an account. This is just a screenshot of the Eclipse page. You register, next slide. We collect some very basic information and you get a confirmation email. So anybody can create an account, but then what you can do with that depends on your level of licensure. We'll take a look at the next slide. So just as you move through Eclipse, just to note a couple of things. Again, there's administrative text. It's this italicized text that's designed to help you. We're trying to tell you something, so make sure you read it, especially if you're stuck. Blue dots, it's the same thing. It just provides more expansive information. The website, this is really important. Eclipse is an online application. It's not a permit wizard. So just as you need to know if you're filing in person, you need to know what's required for that permit application. Otherwise, it will come in for a review, but you're gonna get hung up because there will be additional information required. And keep in mind that we do have a lot of instructional videos and FAQs to assist you. Then if you're still stuck, then submit an online form or contact 311 and an agent will assist you. Okay, so now you have an Eclipse account. I just want to point out some things on your homepage. If folks have a lot of rental licenses, they'll know how painful this can be. Can you click next, Jace? I think a bunch of errors come up. Okay, so the pay button, this is a shopping cart feature. Unfortunately, it's only available for permits right now. It is not available for rental licenses yet, and we don't have a date. But this allows you to actually pay multiple invoices at one time. Otherwise, when you pay one by one, you go out to a third-party payment gateway and you have to enter all of your contact information and all of your payment information each time. And it can be painful. So this is a nice shopping cart function. But otherwise, if you click next, Chase. The activity licenses, this is where you register for a new activity license or associate an old one. Hopefully everybody has moved beyond that. The business licenses, if you have an activity license, you'll have an option to also apply for business licenses. Trade licenses, if you're a home improvement contractor, you want to use the apply for trade license option. And if you're a design professional or attorney, you use apply for registration. Under permits and certificates, that's where you'll apply for a permit. Under that is probably the most widely misunderstood feature in Eclipse, associate with a permit or project. What that does is allow you to add somebody in as a co-applicant to your application so they can have the same level of access as you do. So if you're a contractor and you made the permit application, maybe you want the design professional to respond to comments. If you're the design professional, maybe you want the contractor to pay for the permit, or maybe the owner wants to see what's happening. These are all reasons why you would associate somebody to a permit. What it won't do is grant you access to a legacy permit. It won't allow a contractor the level of access necessary to a firm association. And you cannot actually invite anybody into a legacy permit. If you want to do any of those things, you need to use the online form to request access. You can also create a project that's really just a nice file folder. And then under My Activities, it'll list your last 50 permits. Okay, next slide, Jace. Okay, and again, this is just your homepage. My inspections, they are not your construction inspections, they're your business license inspections. So if you have a family daycare or a high-rise or a special assembly license that requires an inspection, you'll see that information there. My projects is where your nice file folders that you created will be organized. Your businesses and activity licenses, that all relates to your business licenses. Obviously, your trade licenses or contractor and home improvement. Your registrations, that's for design professionals and attorneys. And then hearings and appeals or appeals that you filed to the board. Next slide, Jace. Okay, so we're going to apply for a permit. I just want to point out a few things on the permit types because this can be tricky. For the most part, we try to make sure the permit types mirror the website service to help you figure out which permit type to apply for. But here, in most cases, the construction permits are in the first column. These are your main building permits and your trade permits. The next column are miscellaneous items that aren't really integrated with the building. Antennas, fences, signs, etc. You would always use that for these types of work. And then the most confusing is probably the last. Easy permits or permits without plans. This doesn't actually encompass all of the easy permits, and you don't always have to apply using an easy permit. So these are really ones that were designed to auto issue. There's no check on the L&I side if your contractor information is square at application. But like, so for instance, a deck, I can't remember the requirements off the top of my head, but it used to be, it couldn't be any larger than 216 square feet. So if you have a 300 square foot deck, you wouldn't use the easy permit, you would go under residential permit. And if you don't see your permit type here, don't try to just use what you think fits best. Go to the residential building permit and use that permit. So for instance, if you're renovating a single family dwelling, then it's the residential building permit that you would select. Don't select interior non-load bearing demolition because it seems like it's the closest. Same with trades. All of the easy permits for trades are under those options. Okay, you can go to the next slide. That's fine, Jace. Okay, then zoning. There's a whole lot of options here. They all take you to the same application. Again, this is really just intended to mirror the website service so folks aren't confused. Operations permits, that's like tents and special events. We have certificates, a CO, that's a CO or a lawful occupancy would always be part of your building permit where there's construction. But if this is standalone, you need a certificate of occupancy because there's no work being done. You would apply using the certificate. If you're increasing the number of occupants, say in a restaurant, or you lost your lawful occupancy certificate, then you would use the lawful occupancy certificate option. You can also see this is where you apply for property sales certs. And then there's some preliminary plan review options. Usually folks undergo preliminary plan reviews if it's a really complicated project or if they want to get answers to specific code questions and possibly seek variances prior to submitting the full set of plans. Okay, so again, I'm not going to walk through all of these screens. I do just want to mention a couple of things that people get hung up on. What is your relationship to this permit? If you're the owner, it's easy. Just make sure that your name is the same as it is on the address screen, or you submit proof of ownership. If you're a professional tradesperson, then the design professional has to be registered, or the attorney, or the expediter, or the contractor. If you don't see anything in this pull down, there's a problem, and don't try to submit without it. You want to fix the problem. If you're a design professional or an attorney or a home improvement contractor, you probably didn't register or didn't wait for it to be approved. But if you're a contractor, then you're probably just not associated with that account. And you can submit a request to L&I and we will make that connection. So I also just want to note at the bottom, you see standard review, comply with easy standard, accelerated review. Again, comply with easy standard. If you select this, then do make sure you actually comply with the limitations and conditions set forth in the easy standard. And that's available on the website service. Next slide, Jace. Okay, address. If this is the OPA address, if you're using an OPA address and you don't see it, try shortening the search. Eclipse does partial matches, but it won't find it if it's too long. And here's where the owner information would be as well. It's not shown on this screenshot, but if you're a recent owner, then you want to select owner is changed and submit the proof in the form of a deed or settlement sheet. Okay. Okay, this next screen is just a read-only screen that identifies potential geographic impacts. So for instance, if it's a historic resource, that means your property is on the City of Philadelphia Historic Registry. And in this case, for a building permit, this is a commercial building permit, but the same thing would apply for a residential. In this case, it will send a review to the Historic Commission. Okay, next slide, Jace. Okay, and then here's some just basic application questions. Please do be careful and take care when you're completing the application. These questions are designed to drive workflow. So if you miss one or you didn't answer it correctly, it's not going to trigger the review that's needed. Okay, next slide. And again, here's some more questions. I actually showed this slide because this is where you'll see the combo permit represented. And this isn't very intuitive. So you can see anything that's required is marked with a red asterisk. If this was a new construction permit, everything but fire suppression would be marked here because you need to supply that information with your permit. In all other cases, it's optional. And the dollar value that you enter dictates what's going to be required. So for instance, I added a dollar value for mechanical and fuel gas because I intend to include mechanical work on this application. If I decided that that was a mistake and I don't actually want to include that information, I need to get back to the screen, reset it to 0, and move forward. Okay, next slide, Jace. Okay, and here's the select contractor screen. You never need to identify the contractor prior to submission, but if you have a contractor and you can't find them here, there's a couple of things happening. Either you're not using the correct license number or you're misspelling. So I would verify the license number, or the license isn't active. It could have been recently expired, or it's not approved for that type of permit. Eclipse doesn't tell you the reason why, you just can't find it. But they're the 3 reasons why you would not be able to find it. Okay, and if you recall, 2 screens ago, I added a dollar value for mechanical work. So it's prompting me just for basic application information. For plumbing, it's the number of plumbing fixtures and am I doing exterior work. For electrical, I identify the equipment involved, but also the estimated cost of work. And for mechanical, I'm just identifying the equipment involved. It's pretty basic information that even if there are no plans, you should know when you're applying for a residential new construction building permit. But again, in most cases, this is optional. There is an option to add the mechanical contractor as well, but I don't have to. I can do that at a later time. Okay, and I just want to point this out, this related permits, because in this case, it's not optional and people get hung up on it. So if there's a red asterisk here, then you have to find a related permit. You can't make application without it. But in this case, it's asking me, do you have a zoning permit? It's not requiring it. So if I don't know it or I have one and I can't find it, don't get too upset about it. Just proceed as you normally would, and the examiner will find it. Okay, and I'm sure that this was gone over at length last week, but this is the uploads page. I just want to note one thing. Optional doesn't usually mean optional. It means the system isn't validating it. However, it should really be labeled as conditional because based on your scope of work, you may still need it, which is why it's very important that you're familiar with the service. Okay, next screen, Jace. Okay, and here's where you can also invite co-applicants. So if you're the owner and you're not making the permit application, but you want to be involved and you want to see what's happening, then do require that the applicant give you this association code, and they can easily get it here or from their homepage at any time. Okay. Okay, and there are the things I wanted to highlight with the permit application itself, but just in how you manage your results. You can go to your homepage at any time and you can see where each of your permits stand. I have a few on my homepage, a couple are issued, one submitted, meaning I filed it, but it hasn't yet been assigned for review. Another is with me, it's in red, I have to do something, and the other is in draft. The question we get all the time, can you clear out your drafts? And you cannot. We'll clear them out after 18 months. However, you can repurpose your drafts for new applications. Okay, next slide. And this is just a summary page. Anytime you open your permit job, you can see this. The tabs at the top change a little bit as things move along. But this is your summary page. On the left-hand side is information that you entered. On the right-hand side is information that evolves through the permit process. So for instance, if there was a hold on your permit because the contractor license was expired or the insurance was expired, you should see it under hold. At this point in the process, I can request a permit extension through the system, or I can withdraw a permit. So there's different things that I can do. And if we just go back to those tabs there, you can see the details tab is the summary. The reviews tab, if plans were involved, this is where you will see the review comments. Inspections, this is where you will see your inspection history. Project activity is when you relate permits. You can see them. Contractor, you can go to this tab at any time to add a contractor. If you didn't name the contractor at issuance, at submittal, but now you know the contractor, you can go there. Subcontractors, there's going to be a lot of attention on this in coming months. So you can actually add your subcontractors. And by subcontractors, I don't mean trade, like the trade contractors. If I'm a contractor working under a building permit and I've hired subs to also work under that building permit, they're my subcontractors and I need to identify them. And then you can use the manage permit notifications to invite a co-applicant in at any time. Okay, next slide, please. I just went through this one so we can skip. Okay, and again, this is just another shot of a summary page, but I just want to note that the applicant and the contractor have a different view. As the applicant, you have access to the permit, and as the contractor, you have access to the permit. But there are differences. So for instance, a contractor can't see the plans unless you're the applicant as well. But assuming the contractor did not also serve as the applicant, the contractor can't see the plans. The contractor can't pay the permit fee. But the contractor can submit for amendments and also request inspections. If I'm the applicant, I can pretty much do anything, but I cannot request an inspection. Only the contractor can request the inspection. And again, these options, what you can do changes throughout the permit job. And this is just a shot of the inspections page. This is nice. This is the history. You can download the results at any time. So you can see when your next inspections are scheduled. You can cancel those inspections and you can download results of all of your inspections. Okay, next slide. And this is actually just a screenshot of scheduling an inspection. I believe, I can't actually see the end of that, but one is to schedule an inspection and the other is the summary. Okay, so that does it for Eclipse. Are there any additional questions for me to answer at this time?
Yeah, we got a lot of questions in while you were talking. One really great question is, does L&I have a flow chart or task list or checklist for each project type that shows the process, like, you know, for a single family renovation, you know, here are some of the steps in terms of the permits, the license inspections from start to finish? Because
so we do,
information is really good, but it's very overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. And we don't have that right now. We actually are looking into a permit wizard. I don't know with the current state of the economy if we'll be able to do that as soon as we would like, but a permit wizard that would do just that. You could identify the scope of your project and it will tell you what permits are required. So that is something that we would very much like to acquire, but we don't have at this point.
Yeah, that would be like a great project for one of the local universities. You could probably get a team of college students to pull that together in a month. Okay, we have another question about COs. Is Is there a template or an example that maybe Jace could give us a website address where people could see what an actual CO looks like? Several people have asked about that.
Oh, that's a great question. And no, but we could actually do that. We could provide samples of what the certificates look like for verification.
Okay.
To note that when we changed over to Eclipse, all of our forms changed. So what you may be used to looking at as a CO looks very different right now. And they do change over time. If you look in the file, a CO from like the 1990s did not look like a CO from 2010, and we just underwent a change again. So we'll definitely look into that, but no, we don't have that available at this point.
Okay. So we have Anonymous again asking a question. Is there a number to call about a vacant license? This person said they filled out the application, sent it in with the tax compliance and a check. The check was cashed, but they received no record of the license.
So yeah, you can call 311. If you have an online account, it sounds like it was mailed in. If you have an online account, you would be able to see it. This was recent, then you're not actually supposed to mail in any license types.
Okay.
Occasionally they'll process them when we receive them, but during the shutdown, nothing's been going back out. So unless you have an Eclipse account, it's not being mailed out to you automatically. But if you contact 311, then you can get a copy of it.
Okay. We have a question from Matt. Matt wants to know whether a basement counts as a floor for a number of stories.
Under the building code or under Eclipse?
I don't know. Matt, do you
Okay, well,
want to? Matt, if you're still on, if you want to clarify your question about the basement. And then Matt also has asked, if you want to change your contractor during construction, would you recommend applying for the permit for yourself as the owner if you're switching, if you're going to be changing a contractor midstream?
So
is it better to apply for the permit yourself as the owner?
Okay, so the first question regarding the story, a basement is not usually a story. It's defined by the building code, and Jace, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more than 50% below grade, or more than 6. I can't remember the definition.
Yeah, I think it depends on whether you use the IRC or the IBC. There's different percentages. I thought it was 60%, but it's all dependent on the definition. I know in 2009, IRC, I think it was 60%, but in the 2015 IRC, I need to take a look at it.
Okay, so in most cases, no, but if you have like a walkout basement, then there is a possibility that it would count on as a story depending on the topography. But in most cases, the basement does not count as a story. And the second question, I think that there is pros and cons. If you're the owner and you're going to change contractors, it probably would make sense to make the application yourself. You are serving as the prime, just because you won't have to deal with you'll just be able to submit the change much more readily. You'll already be linked to the application as the owner, but you will be asked for information. If there's additional information required, you'll have to provide it. What you could do is require the applicant to give you the association code. So if your contractor or your design professional is making application in Eclipse, you can be added as a co-applicant, and you as the owner can require that your client do that. So then you have the full access, but you're not necessarily the one that has to deal with the back and forth during permit processing.
Okay. So we have another question. I have a property zoned RM1. I want to change from single family to 2-family. What are my steps?
So the first step is filing for a zoning permit. I believe RM1 just allows 2-family. But again, you'd have to refer to that table in the zoning code to ensure that's correct. So the first thing is to apply for a zoning permit. And then you also need to obtain you need to file a building permit for any renovations that are related to that. And you will need floor plans, because we are looking at egress and fire separation between the units. And then finally, you want to make sure that you get a license. When we skip that step and there's a multifamily without a license, it does create a lot of headache later on.
Okay. And how does it work if an owner never filed for a use permit but has a rental license for the use?
For two family. So that would be unusual, but I believe back in the 90s, we didn't verify anything for two family. So we would honor that if it was from, say, like the 90s, we would just honor that. But if there was a license, I don't see how they would have a license with no use permit more recently.
Okay.
But if they never got a CO and they had a license, you're still going to have to comply at some point. So you want to make sure that they give you a CO. Otherwise, you're going to have to go through that process because they're two different things.
Okay. And can an HIC work in Philadelphia without getting a Philadelphia contractor's license?
They can, but they need to register in Eclipse, and that's brand new. And it's more than just creating an online user account. They need to actually register their license, their insurance, their commercial activity license in Eclipse. And there's instructions on how to do that on the Eclipse help page.
Okay. We have a question from Kevin. He wanted more details about the inspection process, but that could get a little bit more into the weeds. Could you give, is there a short website address that people can easily remember to get to that FAQ section that had the videos and more instructional details?
Just go to phila.gov/LI for everything. The pull downs, I think, are organized nicely, but if you can't find it readily, then just type Eclipse help in the search.
Okay. Oh, another question just came in. What is required for a storefront permit that is used as a rental hall?
A storefront permit that is used a new rental hall, there could be, I mean, if this is an assembly use and there's more than 50 people, then there's some pretty stringent requirements in the building code. So you need to make sure that you have a zoning permit, and then you also need to have a CO and a building permit for any renovations. Be prepared to deal with things like egress, accessibility, plumbing fixture counts. There are things that are common hangups, things that could be costly to comply with. You may also need a special assembly license when you open as well, in addition to like a food prep license. So there's a pretty significant laundry list if you have an assembly occupancy. You need your use, you need your CO, and then you want to make sure that you have all of the required licenses in hand.
Okay. And if HIC licenses in Philly are allowed, are you requiring these people to meet the same insurance requirements that a licensed general contractor has to carry?
Yeah, the way the state law reads, you don't need this separate Philadelphia license, but you do have to meet the insurance requirements, or we can require you to meet the insurance requirements that were in effect at that time. And our insurance requirements haven't changed. So yes, you still do need to meet the same insurance levels. You need general liability, workman's comp, if you have employees, and auto.
Okay, okay. And so Elizabeth, you know, the last decade, I mean, there's been such an explosion in construction, particularly in the residential sphere in Philadelphia. And on Facebook, there are some community groups that have even started Facebook pages to document rogue contractors. And it's been a lot of stuff in the news with properties collapsing, or, you know, the walls not being reinforced, all that kind of stuff. So what's happening with that? How was that able to happen on, you know, such a scale where these houses are being renovated or being built, and
right.
the craftsmanship is so shoddy? How does that fly under the radar with L&I?
Well, so in most cases, I don't know that it's flying under the radar. In most cases, the work is illegal, obviously. And even if they have permits, they're not the proper permits.
Okay.
And we have been very responsive to all of that and trying to make changes to our code. And just some example of things that have happened or will happen to address that specifically. So for the easy permits for interior renovations, we really don't want it to be difficult for somebody to get a permit to renovate a single family dwelling where there's no impact. But the problem is, a lot of times now people are savvy enough to know that they need a permit, but they don't really know what it means. So a lot of times these contractors would obtain these permits for just non-structural renovations, like drywall in a single family dwelling or kitchen renovation. In reality, they're dropping a basement, they're replacing all the floor joists. So that's actually why we require an engineer's report if anyone other than the owner is doing the work or making the application. So we do require an engineer's report or a report from a design professional to at least confirm that no other structural renovations are required based on the building. And then there's other things that we're looking at. We are looking at, and the building shut down and the city council has stalled us, but we are looking at a maximum basement depth where there is an adjacent building. We're looking at certain requirements for waterproofing. How do we verify full compliance with the code? What additional steps do we need to take? And also the requirements when because these are all infill construction issues. So more stringent requirements during infill as far as like how you actually construct the wall. It's not defined in the code presently. Notification to adjacent owners. So we actually are very cognizant of that and are constantly looking at ways to improve compliance and to compliance with the current code and also improve the current codes. Now, these next slides on job site safety, we actually have a unit that's dedicated to evaluating sites and really looking at the administrative side of things to make sure that everyone's properly licensed, where third-party inspectors are required, that they're actually on site when they're supposed to be. And that unit is under it's been in existence for a few years, but it's under new leadership, and they have a really aggressive plan in place to evaluate and audit these sites and bring folks into greater compliance.
Okay, great.
Okay, so with that then, I mean, that's a nice segue into these last few slides. These are actually slides provided by our Audits and Investigations unit. So just some things that you need to be aware of if you're the contractor or the owner. Don't start work until you get the go-ahead. So make sure that you've requested and passed your initial inspection. Know when your next inspection is required and be careful not to exceed that scope. So for instance, if your next inspection is a framing inspection, don't conceal the walls. And do not deviate from the approved plans without applying for an amended permit. Now you can apply for field approved changes. So these are just sort of basic changes that the inspector can approve, or you can apply for an amended permit that requires new plans or modified plans. And on our website, there's a fact sheet that distinguishes between the two to guide you to know when you actually need plans. Okay, next slide. Okay, and make sure that you adhere to the OSHA training requirements. Anytime that your job site is active, the person in charge of the job site must have an OSHA 30 card. Now, that person, depending on the scope of work, if it's not like a major project, then they don't necessarily need to be there at all times, but they are responsible for this to ensure that OSHA regulations are being complied and that both the workers and the surrounding area is safe. And every person performing construction work under the permit must have an OSHA 10 card. And these are things that will be audited. Okay, and make sure that you know who is on your job site. The only people that can perform construction on your job site are a licensed contractor, a licensed subcontractor, or either of their wage employees. So you can't have anybody who is not working for a licensed contractor on your job site. Now, there may be some exceptions for work that doesn't require a permit, like painting, but for the most part, everybody on there should have a license or work under a license. Okay. Next slide, Chase. Okay, and again, every subcontractor has to have their own Philadelphia contractor license. We are going to crack down on this. There's a lot of attention to it. I showed you where you can add your subcontractors. It's really easy to add them to the permit. All it does is verify that they have a license, but also that information is going to become public probably in October. So on Atlas, where we showed you the permit job, right now it lists the contractor. Soon it will also list the subcontractors. So it will be very apparent if you have subs working and they're not named. And again, if you actually are, if you're the permit holder as the owner, you're ultimately responsible. And if you're the general contractor or the contractor named on the permit, then you're also responsible. So you want to make sure that everybody else on the job site is in compliance to protect yourself. Okay, next slide, Jace. And special inspections. The code dictates where third-party special inspections are required, and they're pretty much required on every residential new construction. If it doesn't include underpinning, then it probably includes the requirement to monitor excavations. So pretty much all new residential construction projects require special inspections. You want to make sure that your special inspector is there when they say that they'll be there, and that your special inspector does have the proper license. That's all part of the paperwork that's submitted to L&I, but you as the owner also want to make sure that that's being complied. Okay. And that wraps up the formal presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. This is Angie. Alina had to hop off. She actually had another webinar to attend. We did have two additional questions that came in. So Warren is asking, what is required to obtain a UNO license if you're not doing any construction on the property or changing it to use? And he says it's a single family, 3-bedroom, 1-bath.
That's not a requirement in Philadelphia. The only time that you would need, I know that's a requirement in some of the suburbs, but that is not a requirement in Philadelphia. The only time that you would need a UNO, or what we call CO, is if you're changing the occupancy, if you're going from a 1-family to a 2-family. Now for the property cert, we do issue property certs under state law, but that only affirms the zoning. So essentially it's not a requirement in Philadelphia.
Okay, thanks. And then Robin has a question. If someone has built a property, a new construction, almost to completion without any permits, what happens?
Wow. So, I mean, they would get a stop work order immediately. They would have to make the site safe. And then they would have to go through the process of securing permits. If any part of it is non-compliant, then they're in for a fight and an expense. And if any part has been concealed, then we would just require them to expose it, so they could be reconstructing portions as well. So we don't, L&I wouldn't go down and demolish the building, and we would give them the opportunity to legalize it, but it could be quite costly.
Certainly.
Possibly not feasible.
Yeah. So the last question for tonight, the turnaround time for standard review permit.
So the turnaround times are posted on our website, and it varies by project type. Residential are 15 business days, commercial are 20 business days. Over the counter, in Eclipse, we try to respond in 3 business days. Sometimes we do better, sometimes we don't do 3 business days, but it's really just a function of acclimating to the new system and making sure that nothing is falling through the cracks. So online is 3 business days, residential is 15 business days, and commercial is 20 business days. Now, presently, we are trying to review all in 10 business days, all new applications. Again, sometimes things fall through the cracks, but overall, while the building's closed, we're trying to adhere to a 10 business day review.
Great. Well, this was so much great information. I jotted down a lot of notes. I know jump starters often ask us questions about this, so I feel like I have a little more information I can share with them, and also this website that is filled with information. But we really appreciate you sort of, drilling down, giving us that high level, but then also, answering more specific questions that our jump starters have. So to you and Jace, thank you so much for this really informative webinar. It is recorded. We're going to send that out to everyone who's attended, and also just to, we'll have it on our Facebook and everything as well, because we want everyone to get this information, to do things the right way, to make sure everything's safe for our community. But thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. And for those attendees watching next week, I'll be going over our loan process. And then you can see on the 29th, we are having the Rental Improvement Fund session from Impact Services, which was originally scheduled for June 1st and we had postponed. So I think that's it for this evening. And I hope everyone has a great night and we will see you all next week. Thanks again,
Okay, great.
Elizabeth and Jake.
Thank you.
Take care.